So our next step is going to be to pour our ice resin into these bezels that we have created after you have let your embellishments dry, after you've glued them in. And so this is a regular package where you could buy at maybe Hobby Lobby or online. So what I like to do is I like to use the packaging as my mixing tray. I use this larger area down here at the bottom. And what I do is I take and I cut off this corner here so that I get a nice pouring edge, and I just trim it down a little bit. So then I have this nice little sharp pouring edge that I can pour the resin into the bezels after I've mixed it. So for your ice resin, if you've never used it before, it comes like this. It's a 2-part epoxy resin, and what you do is you pop this little piece out that's right here in the middle, and this is also a cap that you can put on to the end to save if you don't use it all in one go. So what I like to do is pull back on the plunger just a little bit, cut the ends off where the lines are, and then pull back on the plunger so that it's not dripping when you're not ready for it. So I like to use about half of an applicator at a time. It seems that I get a better mixture of the two halves if I use that much. If you use less than that, you kind of run the risk of not getting a good mixture, enough of one or the other, and you need a very even mixture so that it hardens the way it's supposed to. If you're not using at least half, you could get if you don't get a good mixture, it can be sticky or tacky and never fully cure hard. So I use at least half, and then if I have some left over after I poured into bezels, I'll paint it on paper and make some resin paper for another time. So I like to keep it all kind of down in this end, so I kind of tilt it a little bit and squeeze about half of the applicator into the basin, and then set that aside. Well, I'm going to just use the end of a paintbrush to mix it, and once I'm done mixing it, I just wipe the end of that paintbrush off with a paper towel. So when you're mixing it, it gets kind of a pearlescent look to it, and that can kind of give you an idea of how long you need to mix. Just thoroughly mix and make sure you scrape your sides. Keep mixing until you get a very, very clear mixture all the way through, and you don't see any more of those pearlescent swirls in it while you're mixing. I usually mix for about a minute or so. Just keep stirring. Make sure you wipe the edges to make sure you get all of the mixture down. Just keep mixing. And once you're done mixing, you're going to let this set to the side for maybe 3 or 4 minutes, just to let all the bubbles come to the top and pop on their own. You can also tap it, and that helps the bubbles come out. To make sure you've got your edges and the bottom, and really try to mix all that together very well. So once you have mixed that, let me wipe my paintbrush off here. Now once you have mixed that, you are ready to pour into your bezels. I like to use a non-stick craft sheet. Now once you have your resin mixed up and it has set for a few moments, you can go ahead and pour it in. I like to make sure that my bezels are sitting on a non-stick craft sheet, or you can place them on a heavy-duty like black trash bag. Either one of those will work to keep this from sticking on you. Now, I don't like to cover up rhinestones when I have rhinestones in a piece, because it kind of takes away their three-dimensional look. You'll still get some sparkle in there if you embed it completely, but so what I like to do is just pour around the edges until the level of the resin comes just to the same level as the rhinestones. Then I keep the three-dimensional look of the rhinestones and the sparkle, and I just think it just looks really nice. So I'm just going to be carefully pour this around the edge. Another nice thing about this sharp edge that we cut is that it gives you a nice little pouring corner. Okay, and then you can pour the rest into your other bezel. And carefully scrape out your container. So, I'm going to let those set and cure overnight. And then we can go on to the next step, which is starting our chain, our wire wrapping, and I'll show you a few techniques on that. Okay, now that our iced resin is cured, it's nice and solid. Something that I like to do, instead of testing it, so you always want to test it to make sure that it's set up right, and there's the urge to just touch it. But if you want to make sure that it's cured without actually, accidentally sticking a fingerprint in your resin and possibly ruining it, grab the container that you mixed your resin in the night before, and there's always going to be a little bit left. If you want to test and see if your resin is cured, you can touch the inside of your container. So I always save the container until the next day, until I'm sure that way I can tell and make sure that it's cured, and then I don't have to worry about it. Now, if for some reason your resin did not mix well and your resin is tacky still, after you leave it for an entire day, if it's still tacky, then you may not have gotten a very good mixture of the two parts. And what you can do is, your pieces are not ruined at that point. What you need to do is just remix a new batch and mix it very well, and then you just pour a very thin layer on top of what you already poured and let it set up, and then when that cures hard, then you've fixed your problem. So that's just a little information on the ice resin. So now we're ready to start working on our chains and deciding what embellishments we want to put on the bottoms, and we will go over wire wrapping, and I'll show you how to make a clasp out of wire in our next step.